Do you ever try to bring that Chicago charm while you're here and you're just like, oh, let's test it out?
I do that. Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chiaspora, the show where we interview those who left Chicago, but Chicago never left them. Today is a little bit different. We have somebody who is here on a little break, but not necessarily somebody who left Chicago full-time, which is amazing. You'll know him from Angels and Demons. You'll know him from Groundhog Day, one of my favorite films of all time. And, of course, Veep. We have David Pasquesi. What up,
Mark?
sir? How are you?
Good, thanks.
So, first of all, believe it or not, you are the most talked about guest that I've had on here from every guest that I've had on.
Huh.
The weirdest thing. It started with Hal Sparks, talked about you. Something I tried to research to just make sure, so you'll have to tell me if this is true. You did a McDonald's commercial that did really well for you early on. And because, one thing I talked about with Hal and a lot of people here is like you have to usually leave Chicago to really make it in entertainment. You're like one of the only guys who stayed and made it.
I used to do a lot of voiceover work, and I was able to stay in Chicago because I did some commercials, a lot for McDonald's. A couple friends of mine, John Montgomery, who's out here now, and a guy named Bob Merlotti, who's also out here. I worked for them a bunch.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm. So did you think early on you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to move to LA, and it just didn't happen? Because you come out here.
I do. I come out here a lot, and I had a place here for a long time. I just kept a place, a bedroom in a friend's apartment.
Gotcha.
So I was a great roommate because I just wasn't here that often. With Spencer Garrett, and I lived with who's a great actor, and Evan Gore, who I also know from Chicago.
Okay.
We were all roommates, and I don't know that I ever thought about it. It was just I never planned any of this. So I ended up doing commercials, and I was making my living in Chicago, so it seemed silly to leave while that was happening.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't making my living out here. Although I came out here and I got some jobs, and I'd come out, and the voice. Yeah, I'm real grateful to the voiceover people who hired me, because that's something you can do while you're standing here and still do jobs back in Chicago. So yeah, I just lucked out. I just lucked out.
It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Because again, for someone like myself, I was like, I have to go. Unfortunately, I didn't have the voice of an angel.
Yeah, this is and the bad news is this is what angels sound like.
So if you think you get the pearly gates, you're going to get
if you're thinking about dying soon, don't.
This is what you get.
Yeah, for eternity.
Yeah, for some reason, when God's about to decide what to do with you, Pasquesi comes out and gives you a little spiel. Listen, I know what you expected, but
this ain't it.
Yeah, look, my wings are cool, but that's about it. No, it worked out. It did work out. You've obviously made a whole living off of doing it and not having to come back here. But I always wanted to know, for someone like you, you've gotten some major TV, movie, and well, just every role you could think of. How does your agent or manager go, oh, no, I got Pasquesi, but he lives in Chicago? Because I feel like meetings and stuff like that are kind of hard.
Yeah, it's harder for them because they have a roster of people who can just get in their car and head across town.
Exactly.
And it's much more work for them to represent me. And so I've had my agent now has either been my agent or manager for 35 years, something like that. So she
God bless that one.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Paula Music, she's absolutely great. But and then I've had other managers, and my current manager is out here. Most of so I need more help than the average Joe.
But they actually have to. They must obviously really believe in you, that they're willing to go out of their pocket to be like, hey, look at the guy who's from Chicago. He's the guy you want.
Right there, yeah. And it requires that, because I'm not here to go in, and I'm not here often to go in and try to sell myself. So it comes in on tape, and then it's more difficult, absolutely, for them. But it's not more difficult for me.
Right. Actually, it's easier for you. You're just like, all right, well, I guess, because that's another thing. People sometimes in Chicago, when I first started going, before I did any producing or directing, I remember thinking, why don't I just reach out to LA? And then if somebody says, hey, come out, maybe I'll come out when the work is there. But once I got here, I had other friends who would say, hey, if you have anything coming, I'm like, you don't understand. It doesn't work like that for the most part. Only a Pasquesi. Like, I feel like you should be like your own noun. Like only if you're a Pasquesi you can pull that. But for everybody else,
It's the same. I've been coming out here for a long time, but it's the same for everyone. I think when you first come here from Chicago, regardless of what stage you're at in Chicago, you start over out here.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
It goes.
And yeah, so yeah, absolutely. When you first come out here, you start over because nothing and it's like credits don't transfer.
Right. No, it's right. It's exactly like college. It's exactly right. And it's cool in a way because it's like everybody gets a fresh start in a way too. Everyone can stay. Well, there's a part of me that will always look back at how I literally started as an intern again, and I was like, well, I was 25, 26, and I was like, well, I guess I'll suck in the pride on that. But once you start rolling, you're like, yeah, I realize how small this town actually is. That's the other thing. You start doing well as an intern, people will remember you. Yep. 4 jobs down the line, which is cool. Yep. As long as you're good and you're not an ass.
Right, but even that seems to go. They forget. That part of it is strange to me. People who are clearly assholes.
Some of those guys keep on.
Yeah,
moving.
right.
Right. Yeah, right. That happens too. Chicago people, for the most part, as most people will say on set, those are the good people.
It's a pretty great group to be a part of. I agree.
Which is cool.
And generally, Chicago folk are. I don't know why, but I guess we're appreciative of,
I do.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a lot on this show. There are so many facets. And I like to think that a lot of it has to just do with, believe it or not, weather and the idea of like you're not out here. If everyone thinks it starts raining, everyone's freaking out. In Chicago, it's like, okay, well if it's nice out, we're like surprised and grateful. So the idea of just kind of being grateful for what you get when you get it.
Yeah, and also I think the idea of seasons puts a little bit of immediacy that they don't have out here because everything's exactly the same. There's no time.
Exactly, exactly, and people know if you're from Chicago, you're on time and you're ready to go. It's true. I do want to talk about kind of some of the big roles that you've had and stuff through your career, but I like to always talk about how you even like where you come from, like parents, siblings. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Lake Bluff, Illinois.
Nice. What school did you go for grammar school?
Grammar school, St. Mary's Grammar School, Lake Forest High School.
Lake Forest High School. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Did you? Because there are some. I mean, I'm pretty sure that who was it? Vince Vaughn's from Lake Forest?
I believe so.
So he's from Lake Forest. There are a few people from there. Did you know, whether it be in St. Mary's or in grammar school or in high school, that acting was going to be something you were?
Oh no, I didn't get on a stage. I was not in any plays in high school or
Nothing.
college. No, never.
Desires? Didn't want to even.
Kind of a desire in the back of my mind, but never thought of it as a real possibility.
So when did it start clicking?
I was going to school at Loyola in Chicago, and my older brother, he was letting me live with him. He was going to law school in Chicago.
At Loyola?
No, he was going to John Marshall.
Okay.
And he went to an improvisation class. And he thought it would be good for me to tag along, and my mom kind of insisted too.
That's a nice big brother.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
I don't know if when I was young if I would have done that, but that's really nice of you.
Yeah, he still is a really good guy.
Yeah. If you're watching or listening, congratulations. You've now been accepted by the angel.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So I went with him, and that was my first time trying anything, and I really enjoyed it from the very beginning. It was scary, and the people in the class were fun. One of those guys, Tim O'Malley, I met in that class. We ended up going through, we worked together at Second City. We went through the touring company together and stuff. I really enjoyed that. My teacher was Judy Morgan, who was in one of those brilliant casts at Second City. I found out later. I was reading this. I kind of got into it right away. I was just going to college for philosophy, and then I was doing this separately. And I read this book, Something Wonderful, right away by Jeff Sweet. It's about mostly about the history of Second City. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, there was this cast at Second City back in the late 60s, and it was
like the golden era of
Harold Ramis, Joe Flaherty, Brian Doyle Murray, John Belushi.
The all-stars.
Judy Morgan. I'm like, Judy Morgan? Hey, that's my teacher's name. And sure enough, it was her.
That's
she
cool.
She was just a wonderful teacher, and she was in one of those great casts, and I learned more about it later, exactly what, the scenes that they were doing and stuff. It was fantastic. And she was directed by Del, and it was, so I really enjoyed it right away. Didn't think that would mean anything.
Right. It was just fun.
We enjoyed it, and it stopped. And then I ended up.
It sounds so sad. And then it was over.
It was done. And Josephine Forsberg ran the school, and she was great. And we did a little grad show.
Do you know Eric?
Yeah, sure. I worked for him. Yeah.
So Eric was one of the few guys I met out here because of somebody I used to work with in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know the whole tie-in with all this stuff, but yeah, it's so cool. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah, I did a play of his called The Ewell Tumpton at Second City's Children's Theater.
Very cool. I'll tell him I saw you. That's
Please
cool.
give him my best.
For sure.
Yeah, and then so I was just going back to school, ended up going abroad, studying abroad.
Where at?
And at Loyola in Rome.
Oh, wow.
And on the plane on the way over, I met this guy, and we hit it off, and that was Joel Murray. And we ended up being roommates over there and goofed around, and we did a little sketch in the talent show over there. And,
in Rome? Mm-hmm. Did you do it in English?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and not often, but once in a while we'd try to make money, and I'd juggle and he'd sing on the street.
Way to be.
Uh-huh. And so we became good friends, and when we got back, I finished college, but we kept in touch and kept trying to do little stuff, and ended up in Dell's class together.
Was that happenstance? You guys just decided we were going to do it together?
He got a call from one of his brothers who said that Del Close is teaching a workshop, which he hadn't been doing.
Oh, okay.
No one was really, there was Players Workshop at Second City, which is the group of workshops that I went through.
Sure.
Josephine Forsberg, and that was with Judy Morgan. And other than that, there weren't really improv schools of any kind. Once in a while, Del would teach a class, or Donnie DePaulo would teach a class at Second City, but there was no curricula or anything like that. Del started to teach. He was investigating if the Herald was something that could be performed successfully with enough frequency that you could actually have it as a show. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got it.
And so no one knew what a Herald was, and he's coming up with structures and things to try to help. And I got to stumble into that, and I didn't know what we were getting into.
What year is this, roughly? I'm not trying to...
Maybe 84, maybe 1984, something like that.
Okay, cool. So
I think so.
Because you were in Second City for a little bit. It wasn't just 1 year, was it?
No, I was there, including the touring company, 88 to probably 3 years, maybe 4.
Very cool.
Something like that. I did. We did the touring company for a while, and then we opened a theater out by the airport. And I did 1 review there and 3 reviews downtown.
Very cool. And then who was your main group? So Joel was a part of that group.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was in your little crew?
Well, with Del,
Mm-hmm.
Mark Beltzman, Howard Johnson, J.J. Jones, Chris Barnes.
And you lasted with these guys for 3 years? All of them?
No, all the other guys got hired by Second City, and I continued doing, working with Del.
Gotcha.
and doing the Herald for about 9 months or a year or something like that. And then I was working with John Judd, Steve Burrows, Brian Crane, Hunter Finnegan, Bill Russell.
Not
Judy.
Not the basketball Bill Russell.
No, not the basketball Bill Russell. And Judy Nielsen. And then started working, went through Second City and touring company, and then Main Stage. And that was, and then Billy Cusack was in our company, and Tim O'Malley, and Holly Wartell, and Ruth Rudnick, and Fran Adams. And then we went downtown, and then Del came back and directed us, and that group was Holly Wartell, Judith Scott, and Tim Meadows, Joel, me, Joe Liss, and Chris Farley. That was our gang.
Very cool. Actually, the most recent person who came before you was Pat Finn. the
Oh
other night.
gosh, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about Chris, which I didn't know that they came together, which is cool. So Pat was not at that time. You did not work.
No, we didn't work with. I knew him from. I came through Dell's workshops just before those guys.
Gotcha.
So I would maybe have taught him a little bit.
That's
I think
cool.
I did sometimes. Fill in for somebody or coach a team or something like that.
That's really
But
cool.
I remember those guys.
Very cool. So obviously you are doing this acting. Are you working?
Yeah.
What were your job?
I had different jobs. Okay, so at the very beginning, I was working in. So by this point, I'm.
'Cause you were a philosophy major, so I was always curious.
Right.
What do you do?
Philosophy major. I was that was just a degree to get if you're going to go to graduate school.
Right.
And my father's a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer, my other brother went to law school, and so I just figured I'd do that. And then I took the LSATs, and that
didn't work.
that changed. But then I took the business school entrance exams, and they went okay, and I was accepted to Kellogg at Northwestern, and that's when I quit everything.
Wow. Wait, that was like the trigger? I got into one of the most prestigious schools in the world.
Yeah, for sure I wouldn't get it today. But I was working in real estate, commercial real estate with my father. He had a group of people that they had a fund, okay. And they purchased small commercial real estate like strip malls and commercial buildings, and they'd manage them and then resell them. And I worked for them, and it was a great job, but I just didn't. It was a great job, and it dawned on me one day: this is a great job for someone who wants it. And I really don't want. And I worked construction through college, and I got kicked out of college, and I worked construction that time too. And something one of the guys said to me, Tozy was his name. He's like, you gotta. He said, what do you want to do? And I just as a whim, I said, yeah, I don't know, maybe comedy. He goes, well, you gotta try it, otherwise you'll always wonder.
How old were you at that time?
I was probably like 19.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me.
That's really nice that somebody actually said that.
He was great.
There are a lot of people who wouldn't say that.
Yeah, right. But like that's always stuck with me. Maybe people have said it before, and maybe people have said it to other people, but that one thing really stuck with me.
Well, I'm sure you said those exact same words to others.
Yeah, and I'm sure they haven't. That some people hear it, some people don't.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But no, that's great. So that was at 19. So you were working all these jobs, but when you were in Second City, did you have to get a job?
I did. I drove for Fireplace Ribs. I delivered ribs for Fireplace.
Where were you living? Where were you living during this time?
I was living in Old Town.
Okay, so you had an apartment kind of thing. You moved from the burbs.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I've started out living on my friend's floor. A guy who was a friend of Joel's and ours from Rome.
Oh, okay.
We met in Rome.
That's
and
cool.
He had a construction company, and I did labor for him, and he let me live in his apartment in the back room. And then, so I worked for him for a while, and then I started doing stand-up and worked at a place called the Chicago Comedy Showcase, where, again, Tim O'Malley was working there, and Kevin Crowley, Barb Wallace, Tom Wolfe, Cindy Caponera. It was a pretty fun group. Melody Ranstrom. It was a blast. This guy named Jim Shea ran it, and so one of the reasons I got paid a little bit there doing stand up as the kind of the house MC on occasion, and one of the reasons I did that was so I could be more comfortable on stage improvising.
That's great. That's not a bad gig to have to keep practicing.
It was great. And it was really great. And it didn't pay much, so I had to do other stuff. And then I ended up working at this Italian restaurant in Old Town called Trattoria Pizzeria Roma, and it was fucking fantastic. And these people, Franco Zoloni and Lilo Teodosi, and
I just feel like
they were just Leonardo. They were so good to me.
So what'd you do? You were a server? What'd you do?
I was a busboy at first. I was a pretty good busboy, and then eventually I was a waiter. I was a pretty good busboy. I was okay waiter.
You are so Chicago. This is amazing. You're like, oh, I love that job. And you were in like lower 20s, younger 20s kind of thing?
No, getting now by that. Yeah, mid 20s by now, yeah.
Gotcha.
And these guys were absolutely fantastic. They were so good to me. And it was the best time.
That's awesome.
And then I ended up getting hired into the touring company. and
that
had to
was a
cut
full-time,
down.
yeah.
Yep, and then had to cut down my hours with them, and then eventually from the touring company, then the Second City Northwest, and then the main stage.
And then, so from there, you parlay that into a career of acting.
Correct.
What was the first break? What happened? Did someone say, "Hey, I like this guy's voice"? Did you start getting an agent? How did you get the agent?
Yeah, well, no one now. I guess everybody at Second City has agents and managers. No one did when I
Okay.
was there, and if you made it to main stage, you'd maybe get an agent. And that's what happened with me. I ended up until that point. There was something called multiple listing. You could be listed with many different agencies in Chicago,
Oh,
as opposed to an exclusive
does that
relationship.
still exist?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
But you could just, you have to go around a lot. I remember a guy named Mike Races, who was in law school with my brother, also was an actor, and he took me around my first time, and you go in with your headshots, and you
Introduce yourself to the whole
right.
spiel and
And then
everything.
you have to do that every couple of weeks just to put your
Oh, man.
it's
It's a job. Anybody who wants to go into comedy or acting, it's
a humbler.
You're not just saying lines off a script. It's work. It's a lot of work.
And then I ended up getting an agent who is the same agent that I have now.
Wow.
And,
So you got it back that
Yeah.
year. So what was the first thing you landed? Do you remember?
like a commercial. I did some commercials, some local commercials, and I still work with this guy, Ron Lazzaretti. He was we do this show called The Graveyard Show, and he directs all those and writes them with Chris Stolte and I. And he's a filmmaker also. So he used to hire me. Then the first like big national I got was a Head and Shoulders commercial, and we went and shot that in New York. Kevin Crowley and I were in it together, and that was a great time. And then I started getting a national Class A commercial residual paycheck, and that's an unheard of thing for somebody who's never, that was pretty fun.
That's
I don't think they
amazing.
pay like that anymore.
Back in the day, you had some serious hair. I mean, because I remember whatever Groundhog Day 92, 93, you had awesome hair. I have no hair now, so I'm just still jealous of the fact that you can do a Head and Shoulders commercial. So you were doing commercials, but was Groundhog Day the first big movie?
Maybe Father of the Bride.
Father of the Bride.
Yeah, and actually the very first movie I was in, I wasn't in it much, but was Light of Day.
I've never seen that movie.
It's with Michael McKean, Joan Jett, Michael J. Fox.
Okay, was that based out here?
No, it was in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And Paul Schrader wrote and directed.
Okay, I know who that is.
And that was and then I think the next movie I got was Father of the Bride.
First one.
Yes, I was Honk the cook. There's a bunch of hair in that one too.
Yeah, there was a bunch of. Yes, there was. You should be so proud. You should look back at that and just. I mean, you have beautiful hair now. You got that again. That was just an agent pool. There was any actor. It wasn't like Steve Martin was like, I like that guy.
No, but when I had to go in and audition with Martin Short to make sure that our gibberish would line up.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he's Second City Toronto, so we
Right.
had a certain connection already.
There's some great Second City Toronto people too, which is awesome. And but that's really cool that you guys linked up.
Yeah, he's a very kind, funny man.
Have you seen the morning show?
Oh, that's the Apple show.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Check it out. It's good, and he plays it very well. But it's one of those roles where you're like, ugh. He played it so well. You're like, oh man, you definitely check that out. Groundhog Day though, was that a Murray thing? Because
No, I just auditioned for Harold. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, believe it, it's funny. It was like a smaller role, but for me, still one of the most memorable ones. Because this man's going through hell, and you were the guy that like set him in further down that path.
Sure.
It was great. Do people,
Mental health professionals often do.
Yeah. Yes. I also want to know, like, because I ask a lot of people, do you live in Chicago, so in Chicago people aren't used to seeing a lot of celebrities around. Once in a while, athletes, right? But usually not big actors unless they come into town for a premiere or something, film festival, whatever. What do you usually get pinned for? What do people go, hey, I know you from this? Because you got to get stopped still.
Sometimes. Veep, it depends on what's on.
Right, that's true too.
If something if I haven't been on anything currently for a while, nobody. They
That's how you know whether or not
Maybe.
you're succeeding. It's like,
you get maybe one of those. That's it.
no, that's just an old woman. She doesn't have her glasses. That's the problem. No, but so once in a while, like you said, it depends on what's
Just
hitting.
Lodge 49. Just the other night, some guy said something about Lodge 49.
What? By the way, have you ever had like weirdos say stuff? Like, there are people who are like, "Hey, I'm nice and cordial," but I feel like there's some weirdos out there.
Yeah, I don't think I've had, not that I can recall, have any real weirdos. I heard I heard a story the other day that someone like they were looking at me. I was at this a party for a friend of mine.
For them without glasses.
Yeah, it was, and it was a woman without glasses.
Yeah, there you go.
And she was like, she's like, that guy seems kind of familiar. And her daughter told her, "What's your favorite show, Mom?" Veep. Yeah, he's on Veep, Mom. So I get that a lot.
Does that happen like right while you're right in front of them?
No, that
too?
happened later. But that was that happens a lot. People, that's the extent of people recognizing me. Huh, do I know you? They think maybe I'm like they've met me at a real estate closing. Were you the lawyer on the other side of when I bought my condo? That's about it.
Well, that's the other thing. Because you're from Chicago, no one ever associates the fact that you're like you're an actor. Because I think most people expect you to be,
Right.
the guy from Sheboygan.
Yeah, it's not It's not an actor town. It's not an industry town.
Where do you live in Chicago right now?
Old Town.
Okay, so you're still there.
Yeah, I've been in Old Town for about 40 years, in and around. But yeah,
And then,
this house I'm in 25 years.
but you have a family and everything.
Yeah, I got 2 kids. One's in Chicago still, and he's a musician, does electronic stuff, and a producer. And he lives in Sandburg Village, And then my younger son lives up in San Francisco, and he works in software. Works for a software company.
Very cool. And that company is Google. No,
Little one. Have you heard? Have you heard of him?
No.
It's a digit followed by 100 zeros.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right.
Uh-huh.
Wow, you're really good. So but you still live in the city.
Mm-hmm.
When you come out here, did you already have your meetings already set up for you, or was it just like, hey, I'm gonna go see what's going on?
This time, I'm gonna go see what's going on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do
Sometimes there's stuff set up, sometimes not.
How does it work though? Did you just call your agent? You're like, I'm going to be in here for February.
We figure out what would possibly guess what a more concentrated time would be.
Got it.
And I come out for that sometimes.
But no, it's awesome. I never, seriously, I don't know anybody who still, again, I think the only reference I can think of is that Vince Vaughn thing where he moved back, but I haven't seen him in many things since he moved back. But you're very much still working, which is amazing. First of all, congrats on Veep, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
that was amazing show. And,
amazing show.
The fact, and you had a solid role. It was cool, and I think that
a lot of Chicago folks on that show are people with connections to Chicago. Yeah,
ton. And how is that, by the way? When you're outside, do you guys talk about Chicago?
Yeah.
Like what?
So
is Gary Cole's in there?
Gary Cole was from Remains Theater, which is this fantastic theater company. The first play I ever did was at Remains, and he's just the greatest guy. I didn't know him back in Chicago. I think we had maybe met once. Kevin, I never knew. Kevin lived upstairs. I mentioned Chicago Comedy Showcase. Yeah, I mentioned Chicago Comedy Showcase. Kevin and his sister lived upstairs from that place. But I never met him.
No. Oh, that's so weird. That's cool though.
Yeah, and he's great. And
did you ever talk about it? Because she went to
sure.
Yeah, because she did school in Second City, didn't she?
No, she didn't do Second City.
She did some improv or something.
Yeah, they had a theater company called the Practical Theater Company, they built out the space that is now the ETC at Second City. But they're the ones who turned it into a theater.
Gotcha.
And then they all got hired at Saturday Night Live.
Gotcha. She still loves Chicago. She's still
and her son goes to Northwestern. She was Northwestern, and Brad too.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Have they ever come to visit you? In other words,
no. Tim Simons I do see in Chicago. His wife is from Chicago.
Okay, cool.
And so he comes through. Matt I've known for a long time too. Matt Walsh.
He was on here. We did talk about again. You have literally been mentioned in
He's-
every other episode.
He's a great dude.
Great guy.
Yeah, all of them. Every single person on that show,
Very talented.
even though they're not from Chicago, they were nice people.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
No. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, it is. It was the exception. But everybody on that show, it was just the best time.
So
everyone on that show, from Armando, all the writers, it was just absolutely delightful. And then when it switched over to Out Here, all those writers and Dave Mandel was really fun too.
that's really cool. So where were you living during that time?
I was living in Chicago.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
even then,
Yeah,
you just come out for shoot days.
that shot in Baltimore for the first 4 years.
I see.
And so I'd go out there.
Gotcha. I didn't know that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, it's not based. It's based.
Right. They
in
shot in
DC.
Baltimore, and then I don't know if they did more, establishing stuff in D.C. or not, but they, and also the writing staff in Armando were all based in London. So I think it was much easier for them.
Wow.
Yeah. Then they'd go home.
No, I don't know if anyone knows that.
They'd go home pretty frequently, and so and it was edited in London too. So there was a lot closer for them than L.A.
That's just interesting about an American government being written by. I mean, I guess
yeah.
we've done.
It's that difficult to understand.
No, but it's like
Yeah,
we as Americans have made movies about other countries
Yeah, right.
and so on.
But it's so dead on. I mean, dead on.
That's what I'm saying.
When it was first coming on, when Veep was absurd, as opposed to the current actual situation.
Well, that's
they can't keep
up.
up.
You could have said it the same way.
Yeah. But it was people that were familiar with the Washington scene. There was a couple shows at that time on about Washington D.C. and they said Veep was the most accurate, which I found horrifying.
That is crazy.
Really sad.
That is pretty crazy.
Yep, it's just these, and that's them, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, that's us."
By the way, though, have you ever seen House of Cards? You ever seen that show?
I no.
Okay, that's a great answer.
I saw a few minutes of one episode.
So this was weird because when I started watching House of Cards, obviously very different take on presidency, government, whatever else. I was curious. I was like, is this real? And I was waiting. I was hoping that during the Obama administration is when I was really checking in, and I was like hoping someone would be like, it's not like this at all. All Obama said was, it just happens a lot faster in the show than in real life. And I was so I was scared. I was like, wait a second. He did not say anything like this cutthroat culture wasn't exactly.
That's
like,
fiction.
Yeah,
right?
it sounds like Hollywood. It sounds like, oh, of course, this person wants to fire this person. Somebody's possibly dead. That's crazy to me. Obviously, there's more satire in Veep.
Right.
But nonetheless, it's still a little like, really?
Right. Then they would suggest that was the most accurate, that those are the things that the people were concerned about. And, and apparently that they'd screen it in D.C. when it was a new show. They screened it in D.C. And the laughs that they got from the insiders were different than the rest of the nation.
Was it just a lot of research being done, or was it just
guessing?
Yes,
Frank Rich was involved in as maybe the only American on that staff. Maybe. I'm not sure about that, but I think so.
Okay.
But he's pretty brilliant. And so they check in with him about, protocols and things like that. But I don't know if I just think it's that cartoonish that they, it's not, I don't want to say that the show is cartoonish, but the individuals are,
of course,
caricatures of themselves.
Sure.
The actual people. I think the characters in the show were probably have more dimensions than some of the actual people. Politicians.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it makes for good TV, that's for sure. When you were just saying that they screened it in D.C., I'm thinking to myself, what you just said, I'm like, oh, they probably did it for to see accuracy. No, you were saying just to see an audience test to see how it is.
And they showed it for them, and they, when Catherine, Sarah Sutherland is dating an Iranian, and apparently that they just got the big, oh no, that's gonna really,
that's like the thing that sets you out. That's
right.
So funny. Did out of the people that you have come across and said they were fans, do you feel like you've gotten a lot of politicians that have like come out of the woodwork?
No politicians speak to me.
Is it, seriously?
No, I don't. Not knowingly, I don't know of a single politician who's spoken to me.
Because I think it's funny because
one guy knocked on my door in Chicago a couple of weeks ago.
he's just looking for.
He's got my vote. He knocked on my door. That's all it takes.
Yeah. It's like, hey, he didn't have to squint that much.
Yanni, he was great.
That is so funny. I just think it's like people have an affinity to like being portrayed. As long as it's like funny and good. So
I don't know that anybody would cop to being Andrew.
Right. But still,
you nailed me, man.
Yeah, no, not like. Well, that's what I was joking about with Matt Walsh. It's like I don't know how many people want to be like that goofy assistant thing, but
I have some relatives who spent time in Washington. They're saying so many people are like him. That's sad.
That is so funny, man. Wow. I mean, it's kind of funny to know, though, right? It kind of makes you also humble a little bit. You're like, you always look to that. This is the government, but really they're just any other job, like your sandwich. Your Italian restaurant. There were problems back in the back kitchen.
Yeah.
No different than anywhere else.
Right, and they're not qualified. You think, oh, they must have been vetted in some. Oh no. So many of them are just terrible people.
Well, back to the assholes of Hollywood. I mean, they get through somehow.
Yeah. So that show was written mostly by people from England, and there was another show in Chicago called Boss that I was on that was about the mayor in Chicago. That was written by
Kelsey
Grammer.
Right.
Great show, written by another English guy. Specifically about Chicago specific politics and history.
Right. All corruption.
Yeah, right. And he nailed that.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Again, you have to have some researchers in there, but yeah, when you have somebody on the outside looking in, sometimes it does help.
Yeah, right. Some objectivity, or just even, I know there was a photographer I was reading, and their advice was when you get to a new town, take pictures on the first day before it becomes normal.
Okay, right. Become familiar where you start having to.
And so I think it's a similar thing about looking at something from the outside. It's not normal. I didn't grow up like this. This is not normal. And I can notice, that's not normal. That's really bizarre.
Interesting. So in Chicago, because that's what I do also want to just talk about, is you have your spots that you like to hang, or things that you like to do, because you live there. And, for me, it's a little different. When I get to Chicago, obviously, I still have family there. Mm-hmm. So there's family time. But then I have to hit certain spots because I don't get there so much. What do you do? What's your thing?
I go to Nookie's a lot in Old Town.
Nookie's,
it's a great restaurant, diner kind of place.
Diner.
It's fantastic. The Trattoria Roma is no longer there, but that was my favorite Italian restaurant on the planet. And I go to Italy a lot, and it was still my favorite Italian restaurant. What else do I do? I go to coffee shops, hang out, meet with buddies, goof off.
Do you feel like you have a lot of free time? I'm saying this because in Hollywood, and I don't mean
I got a lot of free time.
I don't mean that in a demeaning way. No. I mean that when you're here, I do feel like there's pressure for you to constantly have to whatever talent agent, whatever the case is, or casting directors. When you're in the city, and if you're either you do have your voiceover stuff.
Not anymore. Nobody hires me anymore. The business completely changed.
In Chicago, nothing.
Anywhere.
Not even the ad agencies. Not
anywhere.
Nothing.
No, I do not get hired for voiceover anymore.
I feel like that's where it would be.
I guess there's somebody's doing it, but so much of it is non-union now, and non-union and celebrity. It's just not at all what it used to be.
Wow,
yeah.
That's crazy.
I used to work in that building.
That's crazy.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that. So that's what I was saying. So if you're not out here doing the roles, I know you do indie films too.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Mary Lou Henner was here. And she was telling me about a movie called, I think it's called Imperfections.
Oh, yeah.
It was funny. Your name came up again. She didn't know who you were fully. And I was like, I think maybe Dave was in there. We had a conversation about it because she had a role in there, I'm pretty sure. And it was about a diamond runner. And we had a joke because I did that once.
Oh, wow.
When I was in college. I used to be a diamond runner. And we'd have certain roles. Like I have to wear certain clothing to make sure I didn't get it, pickpocket and all that other stuff. So I thought that was funny. And when I read about it, I was like, oh, Dave was in that movie. And again, it's just one of those things. I know you do indies and stuff like that too, but I feel like you almost have like a perfect world.
I enjoy, I enjoy things. I do. I actually met Mary Lou Henner one time. It's when we were on the main stage at Second City. She came in. We were all.
Isn't she the sweetest girl?
She's lovely.
She's amazing.
Yeah, and it's Southside Irish girl.
Yeah, exactly. But you were from the burbs, but you never lived on the South Side, only on the North.
No, I never lived on the South Side.
Can you do the accent?
Yeah, but why would I?
Come on. Give it to me. No, you're
not going to do it, man. That's a terrible sound.
You're doing it to save them. That's good. No, I love breaking into it. Only because the jokes that I always talk about at home, because again, I'm from the North Side, but
whereabouts?
I grew up in Rogers Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I grew up, I went to Von Steuben High School.
I spent some time in that cemetery. I used to go to that cemetery.
Which one?
I
love how you, I don't know which one.
Resurrection, I guess it would be, yeah.
Okay. Dude, I mean, there's some...
we used to break in there all messed up.
I made a feature in a cemetery once upon a time. There's some really, really pretty cemeteries in Chicago for whatever reason. No, but I grew up on the North Side, but I do have certain family members, and they got that thing, and every time the joke I always tell people out here is that Southsiders are those guys who, I mean, there's definitely a little racism in there. There's definitely a little just anger, and then there's this. I also will do anything for you. Like, hey, look, I don't like that guy, but I fixed his car. And it took me 3 days, but whatever. And then someone's like, oh, what if I just pay you? I don't want your money. Go buy an ice cream.
We used to do shows down on the South Side because Second City is always, South Side has always been well represented in the cast of Second City historically. They're Went and Burns and Moore and O'Malley, and so we would do shows down there at the Beverly Arts Center, and I would always do the intro, and I would remind the people, tonight the letters TH will be pronounced th.
Yeah, what do you mean?
They hated me.
Well,
that was really
did
fun.
they catch it as a question? That's the funny thing.
My compatriots did.
That's awesome. That's really good. You probably did it in that angelic voice too. That's wonderful. People have said here Hal Sparks was one of the first guys we talked about. It's just a town. It's a big town, but it's a town, and the way
and especially even in our neighborhood. I still walk to. It's changing now. A lot of the shops are closing in Old Town, and
just the small businesses. You mean?
Yeah, and anything that's not a shithead bar. Those have come in. Old Town's not what it used to be. But there's still, Nookie's. The flower shop there used to be the bakery. And, you still walk by and wave at 5 people walking down the street.
Yeah, that doesn't happen that often here.
Right.
That's interesting. Do you ever try to bring that Chicago charm while you're here, and you're just like, oh, let's test it out? No.
How do you mean? I don't know the shopkeepers here.
No,
They'd
I don't
freak
mean the
out.
I'm putting it on the street like once in a while. Like,
oh yeah,
hey, how you doing?
I do that. Yes.
Just to test it out.
It's a weird thing. What happened. Their reaction is very strange. Like, it's this trip within the last couple of weeks. This has happened a few times. I just hold the door for people because you hold the door for people.
People are like, what?
Yeah, they flip out. They don't know what to do. Like, am I being assaulted? No, man, I'm just holding the door for you, man. It's all right.
Well,
I'm just holding the door. I'm going to be gone in a minute.
It's because they think that you're the realtor. That they, they just met. Exactly. No, that's not an assault. It's like, are you trying to sell me a house? No. It is, but people, I also have had it the other way where people are so appreciative. They're like, oh, wow. I'm like,
right.
It's not a problem.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be that big a deal.
No, I know. I'm hoping, because and by the way, I'm not like a hater on younger people at all. In fact, I think there are so many, they get a bad rap, the whole millennial and all that stuff. But I will say that I'm hoping, especially in somewhere like Chicago, that a lot of the values that I had as a kid continue. Even
you mean
in the city.
Decency and just common courtesy and stuff like that? Yeah, I don't think it's as common as it once was.
Do you feel it?
I do. I do. And I don't think it's just the young people. I think it's...
How do your kids feel? Because they're in their 20s?
Yeah. They're, 28 and 30.
Okay. All right. So, I don't know. Like, so they're not that young. But have you actually felt it and seen it, especially in the city?
Yeah, I do. I think people are less courteous. And out here there's a weird thing about space, about physical space. It's weird. It's just unusual for me. People are it's
So we don't have to go on buses here that often.
Yeah, I guess so. You don't have to be near somebody, so they don't know how to behave in close proximity to other humans, and like, get the fuck out of my way, lady. Don't walk into me.
That's so funny. No, I wouldn't mess with you.
But yeah. Anyway,
how did you meet Mitch, by the way?
It's at Dell's. So one of those times that I was probably filling in for Dell or something like that. I was teaching, and I was coaching. I think I was teaching, and I met him then.
Because you've worked with him a lot.
Oh yeah, worked with him a lot.
I know because I've seen what's the jail one?
Merc and Penal.
Yes, I've seen clips of this, and
that's a great show, and it is available for sale.
No, but I was so happy that like you guys are still working together and still trying to make things happen, and it's like.
Yeah,
it's literally like watching your friend from childhood like still pushing it.
We have a great time, and we work a lot of when we do stuff, we always work with that same gang, and
that's so good.
That's always Joel and Finn and Kenny Campbell and a bunch of other folks from
That's really cool.
Mike Coleman also from IO back then, and we have a great time. Holney.
I just feel like Chicago people also look out for each other. Have you ever gotten a gig because someone was like, yeah, I remember him from the
Jim
city?
Belushi hired me.
Oh yeah, because you were in according to Jim for a couple.
I did a couple of them. Somebody else was unavailable, and he just had him get me.
That's great.
He does that. Garland always had people come in for Curb. He didn't get people the job, but he did get them to the audition.
That's really cool.
And Mitch.
Have you been on the Goldbergs? No.
And Mitch does work. Makes opportunities for a lot of people have that that's available to them, and very few people exercise it. And those three that I mentioned are the ones that I think do it an awful lot. They're awfully generous people.
That's really awesome. What do you? What's the next step? What do you want to do? Do you want to do more movies? Do you want to do more TV? Whatever comes.
I like it all. I like theater too.
You did Steppenwolf. You've done it all, I think, too.
I enjoy doing all sorts of different stuff. I like working. I had a great time on this Lodge 49, the show that was its first two seasons are on Hulu now, and it was an AMC show. That was just a blast, and I'd never been a regular on a 1 hour, and that was just really wonderful. I had a great time doing that, doing stuff I'm not usually doing. That was fun.
What's your favorite role that you've ever done? Because it's funny because I also remember you from Angels and Demons, and it was, not exactly the normal, at least the normal role I think you would take. How did that even again? Just more auditions.
That was sitting in. I auditioned by myself on tape in Chicago.
Huh. That's how you got that. That's really cool.
And then my manager, who is currently my agent, who used to be my agent, and then was my manager, and now is my agent again. She was my manager at the time, and her partner, Suzanne DeWalt, I sent them a tape, and they had me change it a little bit, and I redid it with much disgust.
You're like, no, I nailed it the first time.
And
no, do it
again. They
again.
were absolutely right, and that got me the job.
This was prior to cell phone times or anything.
Yeah,
like
right.
That.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
cool.
I'd put it on tape and send across a big VHS or something like that, or DVD, maybe burned a DVD or something like that.
Tom Hanks is my favorite actor of all time. Was that cool? Was that cool working with him?
Yeah, I was just talking about him with a friend yesterday. Yeah.
What about?
Just what a kind, funny person he is. He's just great. He was great and talented.
Oh,
yeah.
But no, all you ever hear is that he's.
Yeah,
amazing.
He was really great, and Ron Howard was a
of course.
treat too.
Yeah, it's not a bad group to be with, and McGregor too, right?
Yeah, but I didn't really work with them.
You weren't in his scenes,
Right.
or right.
Yeah.
Do you speak Italian,
I do.
like fluently and everything? You didn't have to.
I do pretty well.
Have you ever done opera?
No. As a favor to mankind, I don't sing.
Wait, I thought we already established that your voice.
Yeah, just this is a talking voice, not a singing voice. They got other angels for that.
What? Well, you can't have them all, I guess, right? Is that right? Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming in. I know. Again, you come here only so much out of the year, and I appreciate that you came here. Tell everybody really anything you got coming up, where to find you, anything that you want people to know.
We wrote a book. I improvise, and we did a show for a long time, the TJ and Dave show with TJ Jagodowski, and we wrote a book about improvisation. If you're interested in that, that's available. I say if you Lodge 49, if you haven't seen it, you might really enjoy that. People who like it really like it. You mentioned weirdos. The fans for Lodge 49, they're not at all weirdos.
They're like the good weirdos.
They're not fandoms. They're the kindest, most genuine folks. I've never experienced anything like it. It's just they're so they're wonderful people, and they're amazing. It's just been that whole experience. I just met with Jim Gavin, the guy who created it and wrote it today, and they're just delightful people. From every single person involved in that or that likes it seems to be a delightful human.
This is like the closest thing to Comic-Con. It's like when they really are in it, you know.
It's great. And like I say, I've never experienced anything like that. Just the genuine appreciation from folks.
I've seen clips. I've never seen like the full show, and you sold me at least to watch it through, so I'll do it.
Great.
2 seasons,
and then that's it. They pulled the plug.
Gotcha.
It's lovely.
So check that out. Hulu.
It's on Hulu, yeah. And then there's the Graveyard Show is a series of shorts that I did with Chris Stolte and Ron Lazzaretti.
Very cool. Check that out. Do you partake a lot in social media?
Not a lot. D Pasquesi. That's it. D Pasquesi.
You almost went Southside. D Pasquesi.
D Pasquesi at Twitter or Instagram.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. You were amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Mark.
Absolutely.